The globalists always let you know what they're going to do in advance. You just have to know how to read between the lines. They want to shift the world towards a particular direction where we will all have our rights and freedoms greatly curtailed, and where they will ultimately have significantly more power and wealth. A neo-feudal system, basically. But in order to create this new world order, they have to convince us to accept an entirely new social, economic, and political paradigm. They know that if they try to take our freedoms by force, we will revolt. So they have to convince us to surrender our freedoms willingly, and the best way to do that is to create a series of catastrophes, one crisis after the other, creating a chaotic world that only they can bring order to, apparently. They create a problem in order to generate a reaction, and then offer a solution that fundamentally alters how people live. It's the Hegelian dialectic. They employ sophisticated propaganda techniques to lull the populace into believing that if we do exactly what they tell us to do, we will be safe from these terrible new threats and crises all around us. This is how they slowly nudge people into surrendering all of their civil liberties and economic sovereignty and independence. The next crisis that we are now being alerted to appears to be a cyber security attack. By the way, the Ice Age Farmer has done some really great work on this. I suggest you watch his stuff. He has a great channel, and he's well worth subscribing to, so I will include his channel linked below. Anyway, with all of that said, Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum is now going to warn us about the terrible, terrible cyber attack that he believes is imminent in the future.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention. So he starts off by building the false premise that a comprehensive cyber attack is something that people have known is a real threat for a long time, and that the world has been careless and insufficiently prepared for it or something. This is, of course, nonsense. Always be wary of the one who smelt it, because it's very possible they may have been the one who dealt it.
Which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack. To use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity to reflect on the lessons the cybersecurity community can draw and improve our preparedness for a potential cyber pandemic.
So this could be the next Hegelian crisis that we're expected to deal with. Power outages due to a cyber attack affecting critical infrastructure and services, such as hospitals. With power cuts and internet outages, supply chain breakdowns would be inevitable. Food shortages will also follow as a result. People would race to supermarkets in massively long social distancing queues, but the businesses would be unable to process their purchases due to internet outages. Looting would become inevitable. And then, of course, widespread civil unrest would be the perfect excuse for full-on martial law. In addition, there are some predictions I would like to make with respect to how the internet could be affected after the electricity would return. But as my thoughts on that are merely speculation, I will possibly save that for another video. Regardless, as with every manufactured crisis, the cyber pandemic would once again result in the populace losing more and more rights, freedoms, and wealth afterwards. You can expect heavy regulation of the internet, more surveillance and loss of privacy, more government overreach, perhaps a banking collapse, resulting in a loss of personal savings, the collapsing of currencies, of course, and the perfect excuse to force people to give up cash and move to new digital currencies. Old banking systems would be phased out to be replaced with new ones deemed to be more robust and secure, so that this manufactured cyber attack would never happen again. At least, that will be the sales pitch. By the way, you can expect the usual bogeymen to be used as the reason for the attack. They'll blame it on Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, whatever. Already the seeds of the cyber attack narrative are being sown in the media. This article is from The Hill. Officials warn of increasing cyber threats to critical infrastructure during pandemic. Senators and other energy sector officials warned Wednesday that foreign adversaries are continuing to target the US electric grid, noting that the COVID-19 pandemic has only underscored the dangers. The threat of cyber attacks by foreign adversaries and other sophisticated entities is real and it's growing. Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee Chairman Lisa Murkowski said Wednesday during a committee hearing on cyber threats to the grid, the COVID-19 pandemic has created a unique opportunity for cyber criminals to attack our networks, including critical energy infrastructure. Murkowski pointed to concerns over Russian targeting of the Ukrainian power grid in 2015, and so recently announced indictments by the Department of Justice against 2 Chinese hackers for targeting a wide range of groups, including a Department of Energy site. We all know the stakes here, Murkowski said. A successful hack could shut down power, impacting hospitals, banks, gas pumps, military installations, and cell phone service. The consequences would be widespread and devastating, and only more so if we are in the midst of a global pandemic. Even after the alert, foreign cyber threats to the power grid were not new. Former Director of National Intelligence Daniel Coates warned in the 2019 Worldwide Threats Assessment that Russia, China, and Iran all had the capabilities to launch cyber attacks that cause localized temporary disruptive effect on critical infrastructure. Here's an article from the World Economic Forum. What the COVID-19 pandemic teaches us about cybersecurity and how to prepare for the inevitable global attack. Yeah, inevitable. This is just yet more contrived reasons to create chaos in the world in order to justify their new order. There's nothing inevitable about any of this, but they want to make people believe that it's inevitable. COVID-19 shows that the world is at great risk of disruption by pandemics, cyber attacks, or environmental tipping points. We should prepare for a COVID-like global cyber pandemic that will spread faster and further than a biological virus with an equal or greater economic impact. The coronavirus crisis provides insights into how leaders can better prepare for such cyber risks. COVID-19 is not the only risk with the ability to quickly and exponentially disrupt the way we live. The crisis shows that the world is far more prone to disturbance by pandemics, cyber attacks, or environmental tipping points than history indicates. Our new normal isn't COVID-19 itself, it's COVID-like incidents. You know, a paranoid person might believe that someone is trying to manufacture one crisis after another in order to continue to destabilize the world and keep people in a state of constant fear and panic so as to justify more tyranny and control. But those people would just be conspiracy theorists, of course. Who would believe such a thing? The cyber equivalent of COVID-19 would be a self-propagating attack using one or more zero-day exploits, techniques for which patches and specific antivirus software signatures are not yet available. Most likely, it would attack all devices running a single common operating system or application. Since zero-day attacks are barely discovered right away, Stuxnet used 4 separate zero-day exploits and hid in systems for 18 months before attacking. It would take a while to identify the virus and even longer to stop it from spreading. If the vector were a popular social networking application with, say, 2 billion users, a virus with a reproductive rate of 20 may take 5 days to infect over 1 billion devices. Lesson number 2. The economic impact of a widespread digital shutdown would be of the same magnitude or greater than what we're currently seeing. If cyber COVID mirrored the pathology of the novel coronavirus, 30% of infected systems would be asymptomatic and spread the virus, while half would continue functioning with performance severely degraded. I can't believe I'm expected to take this seriously. Cyber COVID? Cringe. They're just making shit up as they go along. The digital equivalent of being in bed for a week, meanwhile 15% would be wiped with total data loss, requiring a complete system reinstall. Finally, 5% would be bricked, rendering the device itself inoperable. The end result, millions of devices would be taken offline in a matter of days. As I'm reading this, it's sort of ironic that Klaus Schwab wants to bring about the 4th Industrial Revolution, where human beings will merge with machines. Sounds like a really bad idea if we could have cyber COVIDs in the future infecting human bodies. Oh, God. Anyway, that's all science fiction as well. The only way to stop the exponential propagation of cyber COVID would be to fully disconnect all vulnerable devices from one another and the internet to avoid infection. So it sounds like they want to bring the internet to a grinding halt, just like they brought the outside world and the entire economy to a grinding halt. The whole world could experience cyber lockdown, See, here you go. Until a digital vaccine was developed. How can people not see through this? It's so transparent what they're doing. All business communication and data transfers would be blocked. Social contact would be reduced to people contactable by in-person visits, copper landline, snail mail, or shortwave radio. A single day without the internet would cost the world more than $50 billion. Maybe that's the point. A 21-day global cyber lockdown would cost over $1 trillion. Again, crashing that world economy, right? I suspect, and it's just my theory here, but one of their desires might be to do to online SMEs what they've done to SMEs in the real world. Basically put them out of business. Only large corporations could survive. Meantime, the devastation it would cause across society would be incalculable. People would obviously have no means of communicating with each other with cellular networks down, maybe via landlines if power is restored to them. But this would be a means of cutting communications off between dissenters and atomizing people further. I think people could go back to using ham radios, keep a set of batteries charged up for emergencies, have ham radios for use with your close friends and family, and make use of agreed upon code words and phrases, because obviously ham radio communications aren't secure. When the power comes back, presumably if the internet is inaccessible to people for extended periods of time because of operating system corruption or device hacks, then the only source of news that people would have is the corporate mainstream media on the television. Isn't that so convenient? So this could be one means of just obliterating alternative news media and dissenting voices, and also alternative social networks. I suspect that after this crisis, the internet would be a much more heavily regulated place, all to keep us safer, right? Check this out from the World Economic Forum website. Cyber Polygon. Cyberspace by nature has no borders, which allows criminals to launch their attacks from anywhere in the world at any time. As legal parameters are unable to keep up with the pace of technological proliferation, the absence of international laws capable of restricting the actions of attackers regardless of their geolocation gives these criminals a sense of absolute impunity. To counter this effectively, there is an urgent need to start learning the basics of working together. What is Cyber Polygon? Cyber Polygon is a unique cybersecurity event that combines the world's largest technical training for corporate teams and an online conference featuring senior officials from international organizations and leading corporations. Every year, the training brings together a wide range of global businesses and government structures, while the live stream draws in millions of spectators from across the world. 2020 results in 2020, the central theme for Cyber Polygon livestream was the prevention of a digital pandemic, how to prevent a crisis and to reinforce cybersecurity on all levels. Sounds to me like another Event 201 type tabletop exercise, but this time for a cyber pandemic. This is what the World Economic Forum does. They bring together foremost experts in various industries and fields, and then they come up with reports about top risks and dangers that the world could face in the future. Like we're just supposed to trust their so-called experts as if they've got the power of prescience, like they're capable of seeing the future. Someone has a scary graph or a data model, and then I'm expected to just trust their predictions about the future, like a witch doctor or a shaman. Of course, the justifications used are trust the experts, follow the science, except of course they're using pseudoscience. You know it's cult thinking when they treat their boffins like they're high priests who should never be questioned. Check this out. From January 2020, from the World Economic Forum, the Global Risks Report 2020. Here's a map of the risks that apparently we're going to face in the future. So they warn us about these awful things as if they're imminent dangers. But isn't it funny how they and their partners, who are so terribly worried about all of this, always seem to have a solution to these problems that they ultimately stand to benefit from after their solution is implemented? It's all about maintaining control over the masses through fear and terrifying people into compliance. So we got the Global Risks Interconnections Map 2020, and it says, natural disasters, extreme weather, human-made environmental disasters, food crisis, infectious diseases, biodiversity loss, global governance failure, weapons of mass destruction, interstate conflict, illicit trade, terrorist attacks, energy price shock, unmanageable inflation, state collapse, national governance, social instability, fiscal crisis, deflation, asset bubbles, unemployment, adverse technological advances, cyber attacks, information infrastructure breakdown, data fraud, adverse technological advances, financial failure. It's all there. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of, even water crisis. Now just think about it. In the past, Matt Hancock has just gushed over Klaus Schwab's fourth industrial revolution. Now, a couple of years later, he's in a position as health secretary to implement an economy-destroying lockdown that is being used as the precursor for Schwab's Great Reset. But I'm sure all of this is just a massive coincidence. Now, I think as dark as all of this sounds, there is a great opportunity here to get ahead of this crisis and alert as many people as possible before it happens. I think the globalists behind the Great Reset haven't had it all their own way during this entire COVID Trojan horse campaign of 2020. There's been a few mistakes made over the past few months, and a few of their strategies didn't really pay off. One such example is that of tracing apps, which didn't really gain much traction among most of the general public. I think they were expecting a lot more buy-in to these kind of apps. Likewise, it's rare in the last few months that you hear the phrase contact tracer. That's something else that didn't really develop further. This cyber attack could be a desperate plan B if the current virus narrative begins to lose its cohesion with the public, especially if vaccine uptake remains low. I advise warning people of this in advance, giving them time to prepare. We have to keep exposing how they operate and the tactics they use to hoodwink the general public into complying with their agenda. We also have to let the local enforcers, which is to say our governments, our politicians, we have to let them know that we know who they truly take their orders from, and we know what they're doing. If you want to spot a globalist con job, keep this in mind. If after a crisis that comes out of nowhere, people experience a loss of liberties and privacy afterwards, and life is not supposed to go back to normal, you can pretty much guarantee that the crisis was orchestrated in order to achieve that very outcome. By the way, recently Paul Joseph Watson has been doing some great work covering and exposing the Great Reset, and I thought it was very funny that the World Economic Forum recently blocked him on Twitter. And he says, Davos rattled. That seemed really petty of them to do that. And, well, that made me smile.